Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Ben, and you reach Blasterpiece Theater, and this is our Star Wars show. My name is Ben, and I got my cohorts with me.
Sweet and tangy like that pork jerky, bringing it back. The Wampa Wrestler of the North.
And Dan.
And Son. Did you guys ever watch Captain Caveman? That reminds, when you said that, it just reminded me of Captain Caveman and Son. Captain Caveman. Anyway,
Never seen it. No.
There was a superhero by the name of Captain Caveman when I was a kid, and it was a caveman that ran around and was Captain Caveman and Son, and they would have his little son would say that anyway. So thanks again for joining us, you guys. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, you want to talk about Star Wars like we do, because we love talking about Star Wars almost as much as we love going to the movies and watching Star Wars on giant screens that are bigger than life. So, we just wanted to kind of reach out and do a quick ranking of movies, because we actually did that on our episode 4 of our Last Jedi discussion, but we for some reason it got erased and out of existence, kind of like Camino was. So erased from it seems to be erased from existence.
If it's not in the archives, it doesn't exist.
I don't know. It doesn't exist.
Does not exist.
Didn't she say it like that? She's like, then it doesn't exist. Like,
Like, of course.
She's like very matter of fact, like, it does not exist. Clearly does. So, yeah.
There's actually, in case anybody cares, there's actually a really cool brief history on Camino in the book about Plagueis, Darth Plagueis, by James Luceno, one of my favorite artists writers of all time, and they give a brief, really cool history on Camino and talks specifically about how the Kaminoans, they refused to leave their planet, even though it was it was a flooded planet. I mean, they could have gone to a different planet, could have gone somewhere else, but the entire planet had been flooded over, and they just insisted upon building structures that could go over the water. I mean, and it's a really kind of a cool concept in that whole thing. So anyway, side note, sorry, but I guess we're gonna start with the worst and go to the best.
Perfect segue, because worst on my list, Attack of the Clones. I'm sorry. No, I'm not even sorry, actually. The only good memorable scene is Anakin killing the Tusken Raiders and all of Obi-Wan's side plot, but Attack of the Clones, bottom of my list. What do you think, Dan?
I'm gonna second that. Attack of the Clones, easily the worst Star Wars movie. And the whole Tusken Raider scene to me doesn't even help it at all. It makes it worse, because you've got Padme, who's like, no, I'm not gonna hook up with Anakin, right? Turns him down, and then he goes and kills a whole village, and she's like, game on. It's later now. Like, that's seriously what happened.
That's right. He as soon as he says, I killed them, the women and the children too, and she's like, okay, let's go out on a date.
Literally what happened.
Well, he was rolling around the field with her with the potato cows.
But was
remember
that
those
before?
things? He tries to ride on top of one.
And that was
Yeah,
after?
and then he falls off because they go to
before.
Tatooine, and then they immediately go to Geonosis.
But still, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, my point is that before that scene, she's like, yeah, you have that, and you have the weird scene with the pear, right?
the pear with legs.
But all through that, she's like, no, it's not gonna happen, and then he kills everybody, and she's like, okay, we can do this. So yeah, easily the worst movie.
Women like psychopaths, or Dark Lords of the Sith,
or something.
No, actually, I take that all back. Whatever.
Or something.
What's yours, Ben?
So my worst was The Last Jedi. Like that's actually like I like Attack of the Clones more because of that. We actually had this discussion, and I wish we had. But there are parts of Attack of the Clones that I really love, and I can fast forward through those parts because of Obi-Wan's arc. Like I think we talked about this last time, but it got it's not on the thing anymore. But I actually, my family, I told you the story, during Christmas, like I think it was the year Force Awakens came out, and my family's like, Ben, we want to watch Star Wars with you, and I'm like, we want to watch the prequels with you, and I'm like, are you sure? And they're just like, are you sure you really want to do that? And so we actually, and just because it was hard for them, it was hard for them to get through it and Attack of the Clones, and I was like, wait, and I literally fast forwarded those scenes, the Anakin and Padme scenes, and showed the scenes of Obi-Wan to my sister, and all of a sudden she was just like, oh my gosh, I'm way on board. I'm on board for this, because the Obi-Wan, that whole Obi-Wan arc is amazing. If you fast forward all the other stuff, like the Obi-Wan arc is amazing. How he finds out about the clones, going to find Jango Fett, his skirmish with Jango in the rain out there on the thing, on the mezzanine or rotunda or the landing pad or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so The Last Jedi was my last. That was my worst one, and you all know why. We're not going to get into that. But my next worst was, I guess, Force Awakens. No, just kidding. I had The Force Awakens, and there was the next one up. So
my next worst, I'm going to go prequels again. Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, for me personally, it just doesn't have any sort of rewatchability. Like once you watch the pod race scene once, you never need to watch that scene again in your life. Never.
Do you feel like Rose in The Last Jedi is as bad or worse than Jar Jar Binks?
I don't think she's even close to Jar Jar.
You don't think so?
No.
Well, okay.
I'll get into that later, but
I'd rather have Jar Jar.
Jar Jar, no, he's the worst. And when it comes to the big thing for me with the Phantom Menace and why I don't like it so much is it does so much telling instead of showing, right?
Right.
It just tells you so many things. Like Anakin's like, I'm a pilot. I'm a good mechanic. Like, it's literally all it does, just tell you so many things through the plot, and it's just not rewatchable.
But it's telling at you, or not necessarily telling to you, or whatever.
Right. Like they could have showed us Anakin being a good pilot. They could have showed us him being a mechanic. Instead, he just says it. He literally says it. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to believe that now.
Right.
So,
I'll tell you what Phantom Menace does show. Jar Jar has pantha poodoo for brains. I can watch him get zapped by that pod racer over and over and over. Someone make a meme and just have it loop. Him getting zapped. But I have to say the next one, I agree with Ben. Force Awakens only, and it wasn't even that yeah.
So that was second or third worst?
that's second worst.
Yeah, second worst
is TFA.
And it's not even that I didn't like it that much.
It's just that it's a copy and paste job.
Yeah, I wasn't so excited for it. Like The Last Jedi, there may have been some things I didn't like about it, but at least my emotions were all over the place. Yeah. Like I left the theater being like, dude, that was a roller coaster ride. Force Awakens, Han died. Yeah. Moving on.
So yeah, as I said before, Force Awakens was my next one. Then my third worst is Phantom Menace. I once again, TFA is a kind of a copy and paste job. It was still really fun when it came out. It was really great to see Star Wars back in a rehashed. It was like a soft reboot or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the Phantom Menace, once again, it's like there are certain things you can fast forward through, and it's actually an awesome story. Of course, George just recently said, I think it was like right after The Last Jedi came out, the backlash was starting to explode, or at least implode, or however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. And Lucas was actually made his announcement. He said specifically, I made a mistake in having Anakin be so young. Did you guys see that? Right when Last Jedi came out, he had said that. He said that he had kind of messed up in having Anakin be this young kid. He realized he should have had started.
Yeah, so my next one would be The Last Jedi.
Okay, so that's your third worst.
That's my third worst.
Okay.
Yep. I like some of the things they tried to do, right?
But you said but
I don't like how they did it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like they had good intentions, but the way it was executed just wasn't done well for me. Biggest thing for me, the majority of the plot of the movie is just contrived in the fact that characters don't communicate with each other.
Yes.
and
the whole movie is a lack of communication.
That's something that bothers me like really, really bad in anything. And it's like I almost stopped watching Lost back when it was popular because it was all just characters not talking to each other for no reason. But this was worse because it's like the whole thing. What's the new admiral's name? I can't remember her name. Holdo. Admiral Holdo. So she doesn't want to communicate with Poe.
Holdo holds everything in.
Yeah, she just for no reason doesn't tell him the plan, right? So he goes off, and it starts the whole thing with Finn and with Rose. That whole entire side of them going to the giant casino planet, which is a huge waste of time, and the weird commentary on war profiteering and animal rights in the middle of it, it just takes you out of Star Wars. But again, all of that whole thing starts with the fact that they're not talking to each other for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
And so you literally you have this giant portion of the movie that's just pointless and doesn't need to be there.
And I'm just going to say one thing. Everybody does say that. Everybody says, but there is actually one point to the whole thing. To get betrayed again by DJ, and it causes them to actually because if they didn't meet DJ Del Toro's character, if they didn't meet DJ, then he wouldn't have betrayed them, and then they wouldn't have known that they ended up on Crate, and so there is one reason why. I don't know if you guys realize that. So he gave away their cloaking. He gave away the fact that they had cloaked ships going down to Crate. So anyway, it's stupid, but yeah, there was one reason. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I mean, I hadn't thought about that before, but at the same time, it's just...
That was the only reason.
Is that really a big enough payoff to have that whole thing in there? No. What else did I like about the movie?
To have Luke show up and pretend to defend them, I guess.
See, that I'm okay with.
Yeah. I'm
okay with them doing that, and...
But you said just now, you said it wasn't that much of a payoff.
No, for DJ.
No, for DJ, right?
Right, but
that wasn't much of a payoff.
But the point that I was making was simply this: is that the reason why the whole Canto Bight scene was there, at least the way that everything ended up unraveling is that they wouldn't have known that the ships were going to Crate if it wasn't for DJ. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah. We've talked about having a spy on board. That would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been way cooler if there was an actual spy. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the whole thing with Luke force projecting himself there, I'm cool with them doing that.
Yeah. So you weren't one of the people who needed him to really be there. I
didn't need him to really be there. I like that he had the ability to do that. I'm even to a degree okay with him dying.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people probably don't agree with, but I'm okay with that. But there's just small little details and things that just don't make any sense. Things that they haven't done in any Star Wars movies before. Like them worrying about fuel.
Yeah.
Their fuel supply and doing that. Like it's never been addressed in another Star Wars movie. And just, I mean, step out of Star Wars for a minute, just scientifically speaking. You're in space, you're in a vacuum. You run out of fuel, you still have that momentum. There's nothing going to stop you. But in the movie, the ships all of a sudden just stop and get caught by the Star Destroyer and get blown up. Just little details that they changed, like visible shields. That's a Star Trek thing.
Yeah. Like, and that was something that was never visible in Star Wars before. Or was it? Or
it was in the last. It was Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi, when they're having that final space battle. There's a couple scenes of they're heading towards the medical frigate, and then the TIE fighters try to go and it gets caught in the shield. But back then, it was like, it almost looked like a ghost kind of thing. Yeah. Well, like, they didn't do a lot because I don't think they had the technology for the effect. But I agree. I kind of like not seeing the shields. I don't know. And like how Kylo dipped under the shield too, and it was kind of like a visible bubble, almost like an atmosphere. And I agree with Dan. The next one on my list was The Last Jedi as well. It had its ups and downs. Like, the more I see Luke die, I still don't like it. I wish he was super strong.
So yeah, and my 2 cents on it, like, The Last Jedi was before those in the worst, because I'd actually rather watch the Phantom Menace than the last. It's just because it made me depressed. Sorry, everybody. So, it just depressed the hell out of me. Sorry, Rogue One, I guess. Rogue One is my fourth. I loved Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a great time. Some people had issues with Jyn Erso's character development, but I was spoiled because I read the book Catalyst, and I got to got to experience her from when she was a kid. I got to read all the way up, and you get all this awesome detail on Tarkin and Krennic, and the details and how long it took the Death Star to be built and everything. That whole process with the Geonosians, and then how the Geonosians, the genocide that happens with them and everything, and or at least the leading up to that. They don't go into details about that, but really, really interesting stuff, because the Geonosians, they're really interesting species. Yeah. So anyway, that's mine, Rogue One. I actually really enjoyed Rogue One. Fantastic stuff.
Well, next up on my list, I'm not going to say worst now because we're going up. Phantom Menace. It's so high on my list. I hate to say it, straight nostalgia. I was pretty young when I saw it in theaters.
Was that the first Star Wars movie you saw?
No, I did see him as a kid when they did the re-release in theaters before the Phantom Menace came out. So I saw the originals in theaters and then saw Phantom Menace, but I don't know. I was like 10, 11, so it's like I remember it pretty dang vividly. I remember Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, the music, Duel of Fates, the #1 best soundtrack to come out of Star Wars. I don't even care what anybody says. The best. Darth Maul fighting at the... Darth Maul was a horrible character as far as like, dude, the dialogue, no screen time, but he was so cool. So cool.
Was the Duel of Fates, was that a... I mean, at least I've heard that Duel of Fates was that an actual kind of a spoiler because of the title of the music? I mean, was that something that was actually... No? I don't know. Was it a spoiler for you? Some people claim it to be a very big spoiler.
Back then, I don't know. I don't even think Star Wars Newsnet was around back then.
Well, no, not that.
Just,
the fact that it was on the soundtrack. The soundtrack had come out before the movie, and it's, Duel of the Fates anyway. It came out before, whatever.
Sweet. So, yeah, that's number 6 for me, Phantom.
Yeah, and I'll just go back and say if Duel of the Fates is spoiling the end of the Phantom Menace, it's not spoiling anything, because it's not much of a movie. I'll just say it. So my next worst would be Revenge of the Sith.
Oh!
Yeah.
Whoa, that's
Interesting.
Yeah, I just and we can get into it more. But
it's the longest of the prequels, isn't it? Isn't it the longest one?
It is, and I think my big problem with this one is that, and it's problems that are created by the whole prequel trilogy, but so much of that plot line and everything we know is going to happen. Like we know who Palpatine is from the start because they gave him the same name. They could have changed his name in the Phantom Menace and tried to throw us off at least in some way. But a lot of that, like, you just know it's going to happen, and it just, for me, and then the actual way it ends, it leaves such a big gap, in continuity between Episode 3 and Episode 4. There's so many things that they didn't tie up well that it's low on the list for me.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
And my next one on the list was actually Attack of the Clones. I really enjoyed Attack of the Clones because of the Obi-Wan arc, as we discussed before. I got my family into Attack of the Clones just by fast forwarding. So it's just because of Obi-Wan. I love Obi-Wan's story. I love the character. And so I can be past that. But the point is that I can get past that. I can get past all those other scenes. So I do I like it better.
That doesn't make sense, though, because you said you really, really like Rogue One. You like the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you have it ranked lower than Attack of the Clones. But you're like, if I watch 20 minutes of the movie, it's a darn good movie.
Yeah.
He likes that 20 minutes an awful lot.
It's if you take 20 minutes out. It's if you take the 20 minutes out of Anakin and there are awkward moments with Anakin and Padme. And I prefer watching Obi-Wan Kenobi than Rogue One.
What's next up on your list?
So my next would be The Force Awakens. So, yeah, and honestly, I mean, I have this one and A New Hope almost level on my list because they're almost the same movie. There's a lot that's borrowed or paralleled between the two, but I really liked The Force Awakens. Like, you walk out of that movie and there's a lot of questions that you have. There's a lot of suspense built up of, okay, what's going to happen next? Yeah, the actual plot is kind of repetitive and redundant, but there's a lot that you walk out with.
But it feels like Star Wars. That's the point.
It feels like Star Wars, and it's one that maybe it's having that big gap between Star Wars movies again, where it's the first movie we got in a long time.
Yeah. I think that was a big reason.
I mean, there was a lot of hype building up to it, but even walking out of that movie, I was like, I just want to turn right back around and walk into another showing of this and watch it right again. And I did the next day. So, yeah.
While I have it pretty low on my list, it doesn't mean that I didn't like it, because I totally feel what you mean. Going back and seeing it, and then like they played it safe, but I think it was a good move, because like I remember leaving the theater and I was like, dude, that was awesome. The only complaint I have is the soundtrack. Man, they left out a lot of like OG Star Wars themes. They only kind of dabbled in.
Well, I mean, as an aspiring film composer, someday I'll do music for film. I think it's like John Williams. It's all John Williams, and he wanted to do all new music.
Yeah.
My personal opinion for Force Awakens, it was all very Star Wars-esque. It all felt like Star Wars, but it was all brand new music. They were introducing brand new characters, and they had to have brand new themes to outline those characters, because the way John Williams works is he has very specific themes for every specific character to outline their story, and so you know that they're aware of everything. So that's my 2 cents on it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's grown on me. Number 5 on my list, on the last one up, Rogue One. Loved the movie. I went into the theater not expecting much at all. I didn't know much. I didn't do my research on it. I kind of didn't care, to be honest with you, and I was pleasantly surprised when I left. The space fight was great. Jyn Erso, Galen Erso, their whole "My Stardust." I love that. It was like cheesy, but it was so like,
if you had read
so believable, and like so like, man, I wish Rey had that kind of character development. I wish we saw that kind of like that love. Like, yeah, Rogue One was great.
Well, and you know that you would have actually felt even more for that if you had read Catalyst, because he calls her that as she's growing up. He calls My Stardust, and that. So it's like when if you read the book and you see that happen, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more emotion to it, because if you read the book Catalyst, man.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, what's up?
So the next are we still okay?
We'll go with Dan.
Yes, I already gave mine away.
Yeah, no, we're next.
Yeah, it's A New Hope. That's
my number 5. Okay.
Or my number 6.
Going from
now, right? Yeah, number 6.
Are we at number 6 already?
Yeah, or 4th from the top. Either way.
This would be number 4.
Yeah.
Of best, coincidentally, episode 4 is number.
There you go.
So, yeah, and again, it's just that nostalgia. Like I remember going to see it in the re-release in theaters as a kid, and I can't tell you how many times I watched that thing at home. Which is a big factor in all of the original trilogy. I watched those so many times.
Number 4 is number 4 on my list as well. New Hope. As far as the movies go, for me, I've probably seen that one the most, and that one is the most quotable. It's the most quotable. I mean, well, that or Revenge of the Sith. Either way, like, A New Hope. It's A New Hope. Like, it better be near the top on every Star Wars fan's list. It deserves to be.
Can you guys imagine what it would be like if A New Hope, that was the only one? It's like, because that's what Lucas was planning for. He had no idea that there were going to be more movies. He literally was just thinking, oh my gosh, I hope this makes, I hope we make our money back. Like, he had just like a small, they were just, he was extremely economical with everything. Like, there were very few shots that were actually left over from making that movie. It's just very few left over, and he was just, imagine if all we got was Splinter of the Mind's Eye, that comic that was written after that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just a funny thing. My next one on there was Return of the Jedi. I love the film. I love how Luke just comes back and becomes this badass. And of course, everybody loves that with the green lightsaber and everything. And I remember it's actually funny. Like, my nieces and nephews can't watch the beginning of Return of the Jedi because it's too scary for them with the dark music, the dark John Williams music in there and everything, and all the weird Jim Henson characters that are in the beating of a lot. I think Return of the Jedi is an awesome masterpiece. Yes. I just can't watch the Ewok scenes. I have to fast forward through the Ewoks. But there you go. That's my thing there.
All right.
So my number 3 now?
Yes.
Is that where I'm at? I'm changing my list right now as we're watching it. I'm putting Return of the Jedi at number 3. Fantastic movie. Again, I watched it so many times. And a big reason for me moving it is just the changes George Lucas made in the re-release. And then the changes they made when they put it on Blu-ray.
So which one do you prefer?
I prefer the original.
Yeah.
The original cut of it.
Yeah.
Because you get rid of the just awful music scene that they added. With the CG dancing alien. You get rid of that, which is a waste of time. But the biggest thing that bothers me is when they did the Blu-ray release for it, they add Darth Vader.
No.
And throwing the Emperor off.
I cannot. That literally ruined.
Yeah, it's just to make it parallel to what they did at the end of Episode 3.
Which was horrible still.
Yeah, which was horrible. So it's to make it parallel to this horrible scene, and it just diminishes that scene for me.
But everybody seems to hate that. I mean, I definitely didn't like it when they put in the no at the end of Return of the Jedi. However, everybody hates the fact that Vader said no. Luke said it when he got his hand cut off. He said no. I mean, the same thing. But it just makes you wonder: is it like because James Earl Jones is saying no? Does it sound really bad? I'm wondering. I'm thinking out loud. I don't know.
Perfect segue into my number 3, which is Empire Strikes Back. Probably a lot of you are like, WTF. Number 3, Empire. What are you talking about? Though, to touch basis on that, I think the whole, like, Luke getting his hand chopped off, no! You see his face. Like, dude, we just watched him fight. You see him go from this young, buckling Jedi Padawan learner, and then he's getting his butt handed to him. Like, he's all beat up, gets his hand chopped off. But with the Darth Vader scene in Revenge of the Sith, it's like, he just got transformed. He has this whole suit on. He's faceless. He's burnt to a crisp. Padme just died. It would have been more hurtful if he just didn't say anything. He just stood there silently.
It's just in the character.
Crushed everything.
Yeah,
But
I'm game with him. I'm game with him crushing everything, and like, because he does that in the movie. The Force, breaks a bunch of stuff. But it would have been much more powerful if he was just silent, and instead of like yelling, he just like kind of broods over it, and everything breaks, and it would have been great. And especially if you highlight that moment with a good soundtrack, would have been fantastic.
Yeah. But Empire, number 3. It may be 3 in my favorite, but I will acknowledge, as far as like all the movies go, Empire Strikes Back is, dude, it from start to finish keeps you the whole way. The soundtrack, the story, just everything. It's definitely the best movie, but it's number 3 on my list. What about you, Ben?
So my third was A New Hope. Classic story. You got your Alec Guinness. You've got your Peter Cushing. Obi-Wan dies, man, or at least becomes part of the Force or whatever. He becomes part of the nether regions of the Nethervold.
Which is funny because now, if you look back at it, we might be going that direction of Force ghosts, maybe. And that's funny because Obi-Wan was an OG. Man, he did it back in the first movie, and now we're all getting hyped over it years later.
But I really think Revenge of the Sith is my second favorite Star Wars movie. I love that movie so much. The opening scene, I can remember the first time I saw that, the opening scene where you see them on the Star Destroyer, and then finally the Star Destroyer pulls away and you see the entire battle that way. It's incredibly artful directing by George Lucas. I mean, it's a great moment in Star Wars. And you have Obi-Wan and Anakin just flying through, and it's been a couple of years, and so you don't get the awesome development of their friendship and everything involved there, and you don't get it until the Clone Wars. But I know that it's kind of shoehorned, but I love the whole scene with, I mean, you have Darth Vader, you have the Emperor, and Obi-Wan Kenobi in a freaking elevator shaft, like dodging elevators and going upside down and doing this whole thing that they have to do to get the Chancellor out of there. It's a really great. I think that whole opening scene is a great moment in Star Wars, and I love the story of how you get there. Of course, we know the end of Revenge of the Sith. We all know how it's going to be going. But I remember when someone saw it and they had seen it. They had saw it at advanced screening, and she told me I remember it was like my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, "Yeah, I saw and there is a fight, and we all knew what fight it was. It was Obi-Wan versus Anakin." And I remember just like thinking about that and my brain exploding, just thinking about seeing Anakin and Obi-Wan fight. And it was a great scene. I loved it all. I mean, a lot of people say it's too much CGI. I loved. I mean, even down to the crashing of. That's the first time you get to see a ship actually enter an atmosphere of a planet is in Revenge of the Sith. It's the first time you see it actually going through
like a big ship.
Yeah, a big ship plummeting to the planet and seeing that. So anyway, I could go on forever about it. I just love Revenge of the Sith. I think it's a great story, and it's awesome. It's my second favorite Star Wars movie.
Mine as well. Second favorite.
Really?
Yeah, Revenge of the Sith is
didn't even know
definitely
that.
there. Like,
Nice.
the soundtrack came back. It's like,
Nice.
Duel of Fates was great and Phantom Menace. Like, I remember Clone Wars was like, ugh. And then Revenge of the Sith brought it all back. Great soundtrack.
good.
The
So
fall
good.
of Anakin. I mean, Dan's right. Like, we knew what was coming. And that's my biggest complaint about that movie is, yeah, the watchability now, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, we knew. Yeah, we knew. Yeah, we knew. But Mace Windu fighting Palpatine in the opera room with Anakin and the
reveal of Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis the Wise. Probably like the most quoted thing on Reddit. Like, dude, you can literally start it and everybody's gonna finish it. Like, dude, that it's true.
Not from a Jedi.
It was a great movie, but
Sorry. I
no,
didn't mean to-
yeah, it's a good movie. That's my number 2. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, my number 2 is Rogue One.
Oh, cool, sweet.
Yeah.
So, because that one, I walked into it because we all knew it was going to be about getting the plans for the Death Star, and I walked into it with the mindset: if they don't kill every last one of these characters, I'm going to be a little ticked. Because they can't have these guys pull off this giant heist, get these plans, and then just dwindle into obscurity. We never hear about them again.
Yeah.
So I really liked the fact that it was dark, it was gritty, it was a war movie. I mean, you get attached to all these characters, and then they just one by one just start knocking them off, and they start with K2SO, the droid.
Who was it?
And that,
Who was it that called? I don't know who it was that first called it out. They just called Rogue One the real Suicide Squad because that's what it really, because they really all die.
that's basically accurate.
basically what it
Yeah,
is.
the whole thing is just fantastic. And then they succeed, they get the plan sent off, and that scene with Vader.
Yeah, everybody loves that.
Everyone, you're so conflicted because on one hand you're like, get the plans out of there, and on the other hand you're like, kill them all. You know,
Everybody
it's just
has
that,
this lust. Everybody has this bloodlust when they watch that scene.
It is.
It's kind of a weird thing.
That's what you want. You get Vader, and yeah, you get to see him force choke people and just be badass Vader.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic, start to finish. Excellent film.
Yeah, and it's actually really cool in retrospect you telling me that because my mom saw it, and it was funny just hearing her comments about it. She was like, "Yeah, it was really a war movie." the way she reacted, because it's like when most people think of Star Wars, they don't think of like an actual war movie. They think adventure, fantasy, science fiction. But but she was just like, "Yeah, it's a war movie."
Yeah. And one other thing that really does it for me on that one, if you watch Rogue One, and the second you finish it, put on A New Hope.
Yeah.
Perfectly meshes.
So
Perfectly.
It actually doesn't, and we'll get into that later maybe. But this is something that I just have to bring up real quick because it actually doesn't because okay, so the ship takes off into hyperspace.
Mm-hmm.
When in Star Wars has anyone captured someone after they go? Anyway, it's silly, but and they finished the story in in the 40th anniversary novel, a book, and in my personal opinion, it wasn't done very well. That's just my opinion. They at the end of Rogue One, they take off into hyperspace. Vader's just standing there going, and then that's all you see.
Yeah.
The very next scene that you see in A New Hope, they're chasing them down.
Yeah.
So how did they catch them? It's like anyway.
Fun fact. If you watch Rogue One, when they are looking for the plans of the Death Star, they're going through it, she's naming off different projects. She lists hyperspace tracking as one of the projects they're working on.
Yeah, but that's not
That's
how I know, but that's not how they did it. I remember how I know exactly what you're talking about because they did mention that along with Darksaber. They mentioned the Darksaber in there too, which is something that's being done in Rebels, etc., and has a whole Mandalorian thing involved in there. But yeah, long story short, in this 40th anniversary novel, they tied it off saying that the ship was in disarray and needed to be repaired, and it was like, the ship was falling apart. So somehow they were actually able to.
Out of hyperspace.
It was horribly done. Come on, I really was not happy with it. I just wanted to figure out. Okay, it's like there's like just a small window of time. Explain it better. They didn't explain it at all, and it was just, in my personal opinion, I needed that to tie over. I needed to connect, and it didn't connect very well. So
Okay.
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that detail of the hyperspace.
Because
jump.
it was always in Star Wars. Whenever you see, it's like, and I mean, like every single time we saw this in Empire Strikes Back, they take off, the Falcon takes off into hyperspace. So no, we'll never find them again. And that was all in Empire. That was all the time. So anyway, are we moving on
Time for number one.
So yeah, my number one is ESB, as we all know, Empire Strikes Back. So need I say more?
Is that
Yeah, it's Empire for me. And going back to your point earlier, Alex, it's just start to finish. It's a fantastic film, and yeah, from the second you first, just the whole thing, start to finish. You can't start that movie and
not watch it.
Like there are any other Star Wars movie, like I can start it, and if I'm tired, I need to go to bed, I have work tomorrow, whatever, I can pause it, I can finish it the next day. No, not with the Empire Strikes Back. I have to watch it start to finish, and it's just extremely well done.
And a lot of what's being talked about right now, especially with Rian Johnson, and he's wanting to make an art house movie. Take a look at Empire Strikes Back. That is an art house film. That is a masterpiece of a film. So if you want to talk about awesome, just artistic filmmaking, Empire Strikes Back is a work of art.
My number one, man, it has to be Return of the Jedi. Like,
Yeah, man.
I and it's like kind of the sentiment with Ben with the whole Ewoks. You take out, or maybe you just make the Ewoks a little bigger. Like they're like 6 foot. They're Wookiees, and they would have fixed it all.
Yeah, that would have been.
But
fun.
Jabba's the Rancor, seeing Luke come in as a fully realized Jedi, or at least Yoda says the last of the Jedi you will be when he's dead. But Yoda, just all of it, and then Palpatine at the end, just the final fight. I think why it's number one for me is the throne room with Vader, Palpatine, and Luke. The fight between them,
was great.
Like, it may not have been the fastest or the flashiest or the fanciest, but it is still my number one lightsaber fight today. It was intimate. It was the music. But Dan is completely 1,000% right. It's the original Return of the Jedi that I like, and I have the old school VHS.
Me too.
Like, nothing messed with it. That version it's perfect.
And real quick side note, since you were talking about the magic of all the Jim Henson puppets and everything that was happening there, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the Jabba the Hutt that was used to make that, it's like all they have left are the eyeballs. That's like the only thing.
It's like
that's the only thing that's left from that
destroyed.
thing because they had to just pull it up. I mean, they were in a hurry. They were making the movie, just getting in and getting out of this scene, that scene, and I guess that giant, awesome Jabba the Hutt thing that took like 10 people to move, or what I think it was like 7 or 8 people had to like move it to make it look lifelike. That whole thing, all they have left is the eyeballs.
Maybe that's why the Ewoks don't bug me. I just realized because it's practical effect.
Yeah,
The whole movie was like practical effect. I loved it. I don't know. Was there anything else that stuck out? Like,
Yeah, I mean, as far as the whole Ewok details go, I think. Okay. I was watching Return of the Jedi actually on Sunday.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
oh, nice.
Cool.
Yeah. And this is just a weird personal note, but I really like the Ewoks.
Oh,
When I was a kid, I
It's-
loved like stuffed animals, like teddy bears, all that kind of stuff. The saddest movie in Star Wars till to date is when the 2 Ewoks are running, and the one gets shot and dies, and the other one turns back and he like shakes him. Dude, I'm a grown ass man, and I tear up when I watch that scene.
Yeah,
It's fantastic. But yeah, and again, going back to what you said, that final duel, the music and the pacing of that duel and the tension that you have there, it's brilliant.
Well, it's
Really
finally
good.
too when you have John Williams. I think this was the first time that John Williams had used a choir in the soundtrack too, and that's when that's at the point where you've introduced, of course, Empire Strikes Back is where the Imperial March was first introduced, and then Return of the Jedi is when they introduced that extremely dark
Yeah, I know
That's
exactly
and
what
that's
you're
and
talking
then
about.
that was when John Williams was just really all of a sudden using the choir, and that was back before computer programs were using pre-recorded choirs. John Williams had a real choir come in there and record that, so that was like a real deal. That was a real deal. But yeah, it's like, and that's during that whole scene. I will never forget that scene of Luke and Vader fighting and Luke becoming more powerful, etc. And the choir singing. Very cool stuff. Yeah, it's great stuff. It's iconic moments. It's when Luke becomes the Jedi and Han can't believe it. Han's like, a Jedi, what? And it's like, it's just kind of this really cool thing happen. Characters progressing, characters having awesome development, and all that. So Empire Strikes Back. A lot of people right now are talking about how Rian Johnson specifically said with Empire. He said specifically that there's a lot of people would just have huge problems with Empire Strikes Back, and I mean I get that, we all get that, but I think the thing is that it introduced family.
No, I know what Ben's talking about. Rian Johnson made a comment saying that if The Empire Strikes Back was released nowadays, it would be getting as much flack as The Last Jedi, which
Yes.
I don't agree with at all, because Empire Strikes Back had, like Dan was saying, you can't, dude, I'm with him. You can't start it and not stop it. Or even when you start watching it in the middle, you're flipping through TV and it's the Yoda scene, you're like, oh.
I know what I'm watching.
Yeah, you just stop and it's done. That's what you're watching. Empire Strikes Back is great, start to finish. It could come out right now. People are still gonna love it. A good story is a good story.
Thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, guys. Thanks for listening. We have been Blasterpiece Theater, and you have been a great group of friends to listen. Thank you so much. And please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.
May the Force be with you.
Always.